Hi, everyone, and welcome to Heal Endometriosis Naturally with Wendy K. Laidlaw. Wendy has spent the last 2 years helping women with various stages of endometriosis to heal naturally after putting her condition into remission. After her own healing success from stage 4 endometriosis and adenomyosis, she's inspired to heal others, and her goal is to help some of the 175 million women know that there is another way other than painkillers, drugs, or surgery. This is the place to be for real talk with real people for real results, so you can learn how to heal your endometriosis naturally. Please note that the opinions expressed in this program may represent options, but are not a substitute for proper medical care. Before starting any new healthcare program, we recommend you consult with a health professional.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I hope, as always, that this podcast finds you well. I thought it might be interesting for you to hear some Q&A calls I've been doing recently in another group. The 21-day challenge is now open for registrants if you wish to join, and part of that is a deep dive Q&A question area where you can get questions answered by me. And I thought on this occasion, just give you an idea of the kind of questions that are being asked and of course the answers that are being given, to give you a wee taster of what that's like. So this week and next week, I'm going to be sharing what the questions were and the answers, and I hope that you find them interesting. And of course, I hope that they are helpful to you. Enjoy. Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome to this first session of the VIP Deep Dive. I hope, as always, that this video finds you well. Great to see so much activity in the Deep Dive group. So well done, you all, for getting so involved. It's fantastic. And I hope that you're really starting to recognize your value and your worth and how important it is just to pay this attention to yourself through the journaling in the morning, through the meditation in the afternoon, and just starting to kind of like, with the assignments and things that are being, presented to you, just to kind of start to think inside, to open up, but when we start on this journey of healing, it's not just the uterus, it's not just the intestinal tract, it's not just the thyroid, it's not just all these other ailments that show up as a woman with endometriosis. It's the whole body, whole person. So this is why it's so important with the 21-day challenge and the deep dive, that we really are starting to really become more comfortable with the emotional component. And I use the word emotional rather than psychological or mental or trauma or anything like that, and breaking these things off. I think sometimes the term mental health can sound a bit harsh and sounds like very judgmental. And I know on my journey, I had various people say, oh, you just need to get into the right frame of mind. You need to do CBT, or you need to do this. And it wasn't a case of whether or not lack of willpower. Nothing to do with that. What it had to do was there were emotional restraints. There were emotional trauma. There was emotional fear and trepidation about all these different feelings and things that I had. And nobody told me it was okay what I was feeling. And equally, nobody told me what step-by-step guide to how to start to embrace them, understand them, hear the messages behind them. So this is why in the deep dive, we really are digging down that little bit deeper, just to get a sense of, what are our thoughts and our feelings telling us, for example, in relation to self-care. A lot of women, whether they've got endometriosis or not, just view self-care as selfish. And it's not, it's self-essential, especially if you're showing up with any pain or symptoms or dis-ease or anything like that. You're not supposed to be living in pain in any way, shape, or form. You're supposed to be living a life that is pain-free and free to overcome any fears and anxieties and things that are tying you down and constrict you. Because I think that's what we're kind of doing here, what we're starting to kind of pay attention to is how we feel by just giving ourselves positive attention, nurturing attention, and how our body responds to that, how our emotions respond to that, how we view ourselves. And this is very much the theme in the Academy. I only work with a few women every year. And so the women that are offered places, this again is what is I refer to as like a container, a containment of safety and security, just to allow for that deeper investigation into kind of what's going on. Because anything that's showing up in your body right now has a cause. There's a reason why it's there, whether it's the 5 Ps, the produce, the products, property, people, or past. And it's good to see that you kind of responded to the toxic people forum. You understand that there's a lot of toxic people out there. And some of them should carry government health warnings, have them stamped on their forehead, because they really can cause a lot of misery and a lot of stress and anxiety and threat, indeed, to some people. And that by default can cause a lot of stress in the body and trepidation. In fact, I was speaking to somebody just yesterday who was saying that they were a head teacher in the primary school, but the head in the senior school, she referred to her as a witch. She said she was so foul, so awful, that I decided for my health, and she didn't have endometriosis or anything like that. She said, I decided for my health, I had to find another job. And I said, it's commendable to you that you've even been aware of that, because so few of us are. Like, I had no idea. For me, it was a number of different people in my life at the time that were truly toxic, but I just thought I had to try harder, make them happier, jump through hoops, do backflips, do all sorts of different things. And if I did that, then they would be okay and they'd be nice. Because of course, occasionally these toxic people can be nice, and you're just so relieved that they're not kind of nipping at you or complaining or judging you. You just kind of go, okay, fantastic. And then of course they raise their ugly head again, and they behave in a certain way. And that is not how we tend to operate as women. Now, so this is kind of what we're learning. We're learning about the emotional component. We aren't just the physical. We are the physical, the mental, the emotional, and the spiritual. And as you probably know by now from the videos, we're my approach, and that's why I get the success. And it's not just the immediate success in sort of 6 to 12 months. It is the long-term success. It's the pregnancies after decades of infertility. It's the remissions of endometriosis, adenomyosis, fibroids, and cysts, because we're getting to the core issues. And that's what it's all about. And once you understand that, and what's great about this process is it's very much me and my team run alongside you, but you're doing the work, because you have to get to understand kind of what's going on. So this is why with the deep dive, it just gives you a kind of idea of how safe it is, because it can feel quite daunting to start to kind of deal or think of dealing with perhaps what's in the past. For me, I'd switched off. I thought, past is in the past. Come on, Wendy, you just need to get over it and keep moving forward. What I hadn't fully appreciated is there was things in the past that I hadn't even examined, or hadn't even had time to think about, or hadn't even understood that they are what is called traumatic or mistreatment or anything like that had stored in my nervous system and that was being re-triggered. So this is why it's awesome that you're here. It's awesome that something in you right now recognizes you need to do something different, that has you've been drawn to me, to this deep dive, to this 21-day challenge at this time, because it's an indicator that you're ready to move forward. And of course, you have to do these things bit by bit. So fantastic that you're here. So the purpose of this deep dive is obviously just to give you some of this personalization, and also to answer some of your questions. So let me answer some of the questions here. Asked, I have a hard time listening to my body and knowing if a certain food is causing inflammation. I carry all of my weight in my stomach and look pregnant most of the time. And of course I'm not. So I'm certain there is food triggers. Is there a good way to know how my body is reacting? Well, it's interesting that you talk about the stomach, and a lot of women with endometriosis get what is kind of endobelly or distended stomach. If there is excess weight around the stomach, around the abdomen area, that can tend to be an indicator, in my experience, of excess estrogen and not enough progesterone, because that's where the weight tends to sit if there's a hormonal imbalance. So whether or not your distended stomach is coming from weight or from after eating, and whether it's certain foods, again, these are the kind of things that we go through in great detail with a magnifying glass and a microscope to really analyze, through food monitor sheets and things like that. We're really getting a sense and through sort of home tests and things that you can do. So what the best way I would suggest that you can do right now is probably at the back of your journal, just start keeping a note of what you're eating. Notice how you feel when you've eaten it. Do you have indigestion? Do you burp? Do you have gas? Do you feel your stomach distending? Just start to notice. I mean, obviously there are things like food intolerance tests and things that you can get done as well, which are awesome. But really start to pay attention and kind of watch things like wheat. As you know, if you've read my book, it's like the whole page at the back is like no wheat, no wheat, no wheat, no wheat. So make sure that's excluded. And remember, wheat of any sort, even the smallest amount, the size of my fingernail, can cause a lot of irritation to the intestinal tract, which then extends the stomach. Obviously watch things like sugar. I mean, we're just in a over sugared consumption society, and again that can cause a lot of irritation, inflammation. And if you're feeling stressed or you're feeling down, the first thing a lot of people do is just go for a chocolate bar or go for crisps or something like that. So again, just notice. Don't beat yourself up, don't be hard on yourself, but just notice how that's how are you digesting that. Again, look at your bowel movements and things. These are the kind of things that we pay a lot of attention to in the academy, because your body's always giving you signs and symptoms. So there's a number of different ways that you can look at that. But the key thing is just paying attention. So if you're saying you carry weight in your stomach, well, as I say, my feeling is it's stress related. You're probably craving sugar. There's a lot of cortisol and adrenaline, which is competing with your progesterone. And then that means your estrogen levels go up, and then the weight sits around the stomach. So that may be what it is, but these are the kind of things that can be investigated further down the line. How do you find are the best ways of processing it fully, and how to handle strong, scary emotions? I think if you're aware that there's a lot of trauma, if you're consciously aware and it's not embedded, because sometimes there can be a lot of women who are a long state of anxiety, and sight, sounds, certain things trigger them in their nervous system, so they're experiencing a lot of anxiety. But if you're aware that there was a trauma, again, what I recommend, and this is hard for women with endometriosis because there is a certain personality type, and we're all the same. And if you're anything like me, it's kind of like, oh, I don't want to ask for help from anyone. People have let me down in the past. I've trusted people and they haven't been who I thought they were, so I'll just do everything myself. And of course, we can't do that on this journey. We do need what I refer to as King Arthur had the Knights of the Round Table. So he had his advisors, his people, his confidants, his trusted advisors that he would go to, and they would help support him in making decisions. And that's what I ended up having to do on my journey, is having a table of people, metaphorically speaking. But I have my counselor and I have 3 coaches, and I had people that I needed to support me on this journey. So when it comes to trauma, it has to be handled very, very delicately and very slowly, which is very counter to how a lot of us are in this day and age. We want to do everything better, faster, more now. We want it yesterday. So when we're dealing with trauma, you're very wise to be mindful of if there's scary feelings there. Naturally, you would be wary of addressing those things, and you could hit overwhelm quite quickly. So this is where the journaling is fantastic at helping you become curious and mindful, and very slowly processing what might be stuck in your subconscious and the kind of midbrain and reptilian brain, and what might be getting triggered. What I recommend, certainly the ladies that come through my academy, is that they also get a counselor or a therapist who is very experienced in EMDR and things like that, because whilst you there's sort of support and coaching, obviously these, again, what a lot of people don't appreciate is women with endometriosis have invariably had, to some degree or another, some kind of trauma or some mistreatment or something that it is perhaps subconscious and unresolved, that's just triggering the immune system, triggering the nervous system, triggering the digestive system. And because it's so either low level or subconscious, it's very hard to get to. And the idea of stopping still long enough to address these things on your own is naturally overwhelming. I use the analogy, as you know, of like a fuse box. If there's too much electricity comes through a fuse box in your home, the switches switch off. And that's what happens to our conscious mind. If there's too much trauma, and we get triggered by that. We're trying to think. That's where our prefrontal cortex is, our thinking brain. We literally can't think if we've been triggered. We go into fight, flight, or freeze, fold. So we go into these different parts of the brain. And this is where, over and above the expert guidance that my academy, me, my team give the lucky candidates who are offered places, we also recommend building this Knights of the Round Table. So we have, people, we recommend women also deal with the EMDR or deep brain processing or brain spotting. There's a number of very specialist types of support that I recommend for women who are aware of the trauma that they've had. But invariably, there's been some either event or situations, because as children, sometimes we don't know how to interpret our environment or what's happened. Sometimes we can internalize things. My daughter is a primary school teacher, and she tells me regularly how cruel some children can be to each other, and how it could just be one event that's been internalized and has not been processed. So very important to not to rush these things. And as I say, the journaling is a great way to start to kind of just notice, because when you're waking up first thing in the morning, you really are sort of tapping into that sort of alpha state of the mind, which is starting still elements of the subconscious. So you can start to kind of really get a sense of I wouldn't say detachment, but maybe a separate observer of perhaps maybe there was a situation and you felt you overreacted to something, or it was disproportionate. I always knew when there was past trauma that was still unresolved in me, when I had a disproportionate reaction to something. Perhaps I got upset or angry, and I thought, yeah, it was okay to be upset and angry, but I felt that it was very disproportionate to that particular situation. So again, you'll know when the right time is, but these are the kind of things to start sort of doing through the journaling. Really start to ask that question yourself, and this is where, by asking those questions, even at nighttime before you go to sleep, like, when is the right time for me to deal with this? Because you've got to do things systematically. When your body is in pain and inflamed, and this is why I have a very structured process. It's tried and tested over 4 or 5 years now. And that's why it's so successful, is it's done very systematically and very slowly, because the last thing you want to do is freak yourself out and frighten yourself. And there's so many people that I encountered on my journey that just didn't have the sensitivity and the understanding, even from I had chronic fatigue syndrome and mitochondrial dysfunction. Some nice people that I met, but they didn't understand the degree of sensitivity that I had, even though I was very kind of gung-ho and wanted everything all fixed yesterday. It had to be done with great respect to different parts of me, which you've heard me talk about already. If there's more vulnerable parts, you need to go slowly, so that anything that comes up can be dealt with in your day-to-day life, and then of course be reintegrated as well. So start with the journaling. Again, explore that. What is the trauma? What does feel unresolved? What you'll know if there's been unresolved issues, either trials, tribulations, triggers, or traumas, when you keep repeating the same thing over and over. You keep finding yourself, either in the same relationships, the same situations, or saying the same things, and you're just not moving through that. Then there's what they refer to as like a nodule is stuck. That memory or that event has been stored in your brain in that exact same stage, and something's triggering it. And what's wonderful about processes like EMDR is, again, it's very, very structured. I mean, I always recommend my clients that they literally interview various therapists to check their credentials, phone previous people they worked with, and because it's a very it can feel a very personal journey, obviously, when you're dealing with trauma. And what's wonderful about EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, is it's done very slowly, and you have that element of control. But it's less talking therapy, because in my opinion, if you've had trauma, then you know the trauma. You don't need to talk about it anymore. What you need to do is get into the midbrain, still be mindful and aware, and allow that processing to happen. And that's done through eye movements, which is based on the the rapid eye movements that you do in the deeper sleeps. But what can sometimes happen is if that memory or event has not been processed at the time, it can stay alive pretty much in your brain. I think it's a good indicator that a person is ready to take action, say setting a boundary with a person after they've identified their boundaries have been violated. And do you have any recommendations on resources for boundary education? I think if somebody has, I'm assuming here, somebody has overstepped or violated your boundaries from what you're saying. I think you have to get, it's fantastic that you've noticed that somebody's overstepped the boundary. And I almost kind of would encourage you in your journal to make sure that you are noticing the annoyance, noticing the irritation, rage, anger. Just notice all these things, like, how dare they do that? And then keep journaling about it. Keep journaling about, did you set that up? Were you aware of it? Did you enable it? Have you encouraged it in the past? Taking our own ownership of it. And if none of those things are true, just saying, okay, what do I need to do next time to ensure that that boundary is maintained? I think if there's been an event where this person has overstepped a boundary, then is practicing. And again, we go into a lot of detail about this and get a lot of support of this in the academy of how to assert yourself. And note, I say be assertive rather than aggressive. Assert yourself and be secure and comfortable in establishing boundaries. Establishing boundaries. And in fact, this is something that we're doing actually at the moment in the academy, in this cohort that are of ladies that are coming through. There's a couple of challenging situations that our ladies are having, and again, they've got incredible support by me and my team as to we don't tell anyone what to do, but we can make suggestions as, have you tried this? What about this? Sit with it, trust your instincts, trust your wisdom. What is a good way to deal with this? There's some fantastic books out there. There's one called Boundaries, which is awesome. It's more kind of spiritual based and Christian based. So if that's not your scene, then try and search something else. But it certainly spoke to me because I was brought up with a very with a mother that used to kind of use God and higher power against me, if you like, and overstep boundaries that way. So I felt that book for me at the time was really good. But I think if somebody has already overstepped a boundary, it depends to what degree. And I think what I would suggest is when we're starting to put boundaries in, if we've not done it before and we've just didn't know how to do it, or we felt uncomfortable doing it, we need to kind of, we're wanting to build up our confidence moving forward. So I would suggest that you journal heavily about it. Journal all the different scenarios. Journal about how you anticipate they're going to respond to it. Because if this is a family member or an extended family member or a work colleague or a friend or even a partner or something like that, if you've not put a boundary in before, they're probably not going to like you putting a boundary in, and that's them and their problem. But what I'm for is once you start to put these things in place, I want you to feel confident enough to keep continuing. Equally, because that person is going to start bucking against that boundary to test you, to see how sincere you are about that boundary. So I hope that helps. But I think there are a lot of people out there who are just chancers. They do just like to test boundaries, and so I think, my suggestion is slow is fast. As you know, I've said this as one of my regular sayings, because when we're starting to take on new behaviors and new ways of being, we have to bring all our parts, like our mini cells, on board. And there's going to be younger parts that are going to go, oh no, just leave it, don't say anything. And then there's going to be this new part going, no, actually they've overstepped the mark and I'm not comfortable with it. And I may or may not have mentioned this before in this group, but I know I've mentioned it in my academy group, that it was only about 6 months ago that I remember a situation developing in my life, at my home. And I noticed that I sat on the end of my bed and I said, I either feel the discomfort of putting a boundary in, or I feel the discomfort of this person overstepping my boundaries. And I've always done it, but even now and again, you have those situations where you think, oh, I'm not happy I'm not happy with how that person's dealt with it. And so it's therefore we're getting comfortable with ourselves and how we're dealing with it. Because remember, we can't change them. We can only change ourselves. We're powerless over other people, places, and things. But what we are is very powerful over ourselves. So I hope that lands well for you. But yeah, the boundaries book is awesome. So symptoms are slightly different as compared to a couple of years ago. That is, in the last 2 to 3 years, my menstrual flow has reduced, which is awesome. However, the amount of pain has increased 1,000-fold again, both amount and duration. Well, that's not so good. However, I used to have heavy periods, more bowel movements during periods, despite the pain. Seem to have. Is it still endometriosis or something else? Again, I think from an earlier post that you put up, you'd been diagnosed with the condition. I mean, endometriosis is a very complex condition and very pesky. It sounds from I think, again, I'm going to say to you, it's very important for you to trust your own instincts. If you've had that amount of pain increasing and your flow increasing and things like that, again, it sounds like that it is inflamed and there are inflammatory elements that have appeared again in your life that are causing in that. And this is where again, with a magnifying glass and a microscope, we're systematically looking at, is it the produce, is it the products, is it the property, people, or past? Is it all of them? Because you don't just need one. It can be a combination of a few or all of them. And especially with you saying your bowel movements and things, you should be having at least 2 to 3 bowel movements a day. And that's when your plumbing system, your digestive system is working thoroughly. So that's what you're really looking to kind of pay attention to. So it certainly sounds like that, but again, very important that you tune into your own instincts. I think it sounds like there's been a trigger or a couple of different triggers there, and your kind of job now is to really start to, get the support that you need to figure out what the root causes are. So you're also saying my biggest emotional challenge is when I have even a slightest argument with someone, or even a difference of opinion, or when someone is being bossy or I'm falsely blamed, even in a friendly way. My mind clings to that. I feel resentment. My gut constricts, and the conversation keeps repeating in my mind until the matter is sorted with that person and I have a peaceful conversation with him again. Sometimes it can be days before the matter is sorted out, and I keep feeling distracted and not able to focus on anything until then. How to stop it from affecting the efficiency or productivity and my peace of mind? Well, from what I'm sensing from what you're talking about there, it sounds like there's somebody quite close to you, and it's been very triggering to you. So therefore, it's a natural process to try and understand what's happened. Now, what I would probably encourage you to do is to go to your journal, and I just write everything out. Write your rage, write your anger, write why is this still going on? I can't believe he said this, etc., and ask those questions in your journal. You all have this amazing internal wisdom, wise woman inside you, these instincts, this intuition that our society doesn't encourage us to go inward to find the answers to that. I get that it's really horrible if you've had an argument or an upset, or there's been a difference of opinion. And I think as we move on this journey, as we move through in this journey, we'll learn kind of what we need to put boundaries in about. We'll learn that we can't change other people, no matter what we say or do, or what backflips we do, or how we try and keep them happy. That is who they are, and it's not our responsibility to keep them happy. Our responsibility is to ourselves primarily, and then we can go and help other people. And that's what I did. You remember my story? I'm lying in bed, totally bedridden for 2.5 years. I wanted to save the world, but I couldn't even save myself. I was so busy trying to keep everybody else happy. Now, it's obviously upsetting when someone disagrees with you. And again, we'll learn kind of, is this person being provocative on purpose? Is this person being argumentative to try and upset me? There can be a whole number of different connotations. I don't know what's kind of landing for you or what's sitting with you in what I'm saying. But this is where I wholly encourage you to go back to your journaling and allow yourself the freedom. Keep your journal private and keep it separate. And and allow yourself that upset onto paper. If If it's staying in your head, my instincts are, then it's not on paper. Because as soon as you get it onto paper, it allows you to process it. It also gives you that opportunity to tap into that inner wisdom and say, how do I handle this? Sometimes the way of handling it is to do nothing. Let that other person, process their stuff. You process your stuff. So I think if it's staying stuck, then I would certainly recommend journaling and see if that helps. What is the best way to achieve a paradigm shift or to dissolve deep-rooted negative beliefs about us? Again, I think if we've got deep-rooted beliefs or negative beliefs about ourselves, that can tend to come because it's been projected onto us whilst we're growing up. Again, the best way is to surround yourself with like-minded people that are safe, that get you, that understand you. You don't have to explain yourself. Who can mirror what I call believing mirrors, people that can mirror back to you your greatness, your goodness, your light, your bright, your purpose. That really helps. But if you've been around people who attack you, blame you, criticize you, pull you down, you end up feeling quite negative about yourself because of the type of woman that we are. We're EHISPs, remember, exquisitely, highly intuitive, sensitive people. We take on the different energies as ours. We take on that blame and that shame. And that's what we're learning on the journey, is to pass that back. And that in turn helps for us to re-examine the beliefs about ourselves, to question their validity. Is this true, what I'm thinking about myself? Because the very fact you're here, the very fact that you're in this group on this challenge, the very fact you're drawn to me at this particular point speaks volumes about who you are. It's almost like sort of cutting spider web, sticky web that's been put upon you, and you're wanting to separate from that, and you're wanting to step forward into the true you, which is probably deeply hidden because the vulnerable parts of you maybe haven't felt safe to come up and come out and to be truly seen, and you develop those negative beliefs about yourself to keep yourself safe. So the best way, again, is to come back to the journaling, really journal about it, really explore it, but equally be around like-minded, safe women that can reflect back to you your greatness, so that you can really start to grieve the misjustice and the mistreatment of having whatever projected onto you, because that's not who you are at your core. I had awful people around me at various points of my life, and I didn't know that they were awful. I just thought they were perfect, and I thought I was this awful person. And I'm not saying I'm perfect, because we're all perfectly imperfect, but I just thought I was the big bad ugly one, and they were all perfect. And then I had all these horrible beliefs about myself. So what we're needing to learn to do on this journey as well is develop compassion and kindness. And again, that's a big challenge if all your conditioning for 20, 30, 40, 50 years has been there's something wrong with you. So again, start with the journaling. And then, as I say, it's very important to get yourself in a container with an environment with women who truly get you and believe in you. So you're also saying how to deal with our emotions whilst being with people that are who are very different than us. They may not necessarily be negative, but their nature, behaviors, and values are too different to accept them just the way they are. Well, again, pulling from my own experience and working with so many women now, the biggest challenge, just referring back to your last question, is self-acceptance and self-kindness. If we can accept ourselves first, we then learn to accept others second. We can feel others' differences when we're kind of at odds with ourselves, when we're wanting that connection and we're wanting that reflection back that they're like us. Either that, or you just accept them as they are and recognize that we are powerless over other people, places, and things. We have no power over them. But what I tend to find is the wrestling that comes from the self-judgment, the self-persecution of this perfectionist. Remember, we've all got very strong perfectionist parts, which we're all trying to kind of get into balance. We don't want to lose those parts, but we want to get them into balance. And a very strong people pleaser and a very strong pusher. And we at different stages of our journey can feel like, why aren't they like us? And why don't they get us? And blah, blah. And that's what we're learning to kind of come into, really, is understanding who we are at these deep levels. If we've had trauma or upset, we're trying to just accept ourselves And then at a later point, by accepting ourselves, then we can learn just to accept other people. And it's not an overnight thing. It takes time. But the very fact of just thinking, do I really accept myself as I am, or am I pretty harsh? Do I have all these negative beliefs? Do I beat myself up? Is my perfectionist into overdrive? And this is where we're through the journaling, the act of journaling every morning. We ask those questions. But if we can always come back to the universal truth is we are powerless over everybody and everything else. But you are so powerful over yourself. But a lot of us, when we start on this journey, have just this very poor self-image. We've been trying to attain this level of perfectionism to impress our partners or our parents or the people that are in our lives, and they don't appreciate us because they don't know the real us, or we've not felt comfortable enough in sharing the real us. So this is kind of helps on the process as well. And you're saying their behavior tends to bother me even when they're not around. And I think from what I'm sensing that you're really a very, intuitive person. You're really picking up on all these different energies. You've got, an acute kind of, perception of people. And I think sometimes what we can do is we can be so aware of other people, but we've lost that connection to ourselves. So this is where by connecting to ourselves, and we kind of learn, I mean, this was not easy for me. This was one of the toughest parts. That's why I've created the business the way that I have, so to make it easier for you all, and you can, bypass me by decades, is learning that, as I say, we're powerless over other people, places and things, but recognizing they're allowed to do whatever they want. They can behave in any way they want with themselves, but this is where the boundaries come in. And this is where we learn how to protect ourselves. And this is where we learn to say, actually, that person really triggers me, or that person really offends me. So what choices do I have? Recognizing that we have choices, recognizing that we can change our mind, recognizing things that we didn't know before, recognizing it's okay to say no to somebody, or I'll think about it, or I'll come back to you, or actually just, how are you feeling in your body when you're in that person? If they make you feel heavy and weighted and sad and down and depressed, well, you might want to reassess whether or not you spend less time with them, or even either go slow with your contact or go no contact. So these are the things that the only way really is by strengthening that relationship with yourself. So that and put on paper that they're bothering you. Most of us, when we start this journey, are scared to put things onto paper in case somebody reads our diary. Nobody's interested in our diary. And if they were to read our diary, they've violated a boundary, and you should be very angry with that person if they ever did it. And they have no right. And if they did see it, then you own it. You be comfortable with who you are, but most importantly, keep that journal under lock and key and keep it hidden. But write about your disdain, write about your annoyance, write about the fact this person's just stuck in my head. And sometimes, we need to keep writing and writing and writing until it's out. Sometimes we need to cry. Sometimes we need to rage. Sometimes we need to jump up and down. Sometimes we just need to, be really kind of like, just recognize and feel the emotions. And obviously we've learned to exercise emotional restraint and numb out or busy ourselves from these emotions. This is what we're starting to learn as we move through, is what works with our body for our body, because that's really important. And wonder if you can give me some guidance on products, care and cleaning. Do you think the environmental work group ewg.org is a good resource for keeping up on toxic ingredients and endocrine disruptors, or is there another resource to check products against potential toxins? Yeah, no, that's a great one. I mean, there's a number of different apps now that you can use, but yes, that's a great one for just double checking. And there's nothing better than just your own eyes, just picking up a bottle, reading the ingredients at the back. We're all duped by these amazing marketers. These companies spend tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of pounds with these marketing companies and branding and placements and colors and things to entice us, that sometimes when we're not thinking, we just grab the first thing and don't even think to look on the back. So yeah, the EWG is awesome. And as I say, there's some other apps online as well, which might be helpful just to kind of give you top tips. But there's nothing like just looking at the back of these products just to see what's in them and what's going on your skin. It can start to be quite frightening. So that is me for the deep dive. Keep up the great work, everyone. You're doing really, really well. And it's awesome to see you so active. We've got another call, another couple of deep dive calls coming up. So make sure to spend the time to listen to them. Make sure to keep journaling. When you're in the deep dive, there's going to be more stirred up for you, which is the whole point, because we're going down that little bit deeper. So make sure to do extra journaling. You're up to sort of 3 pages at the moment. If you need to write more, then do so. If you find that you've written in the morning and that's been great, but something's happened mid-morning or afternoon, journal again. Just keep journaling until it's out. If it's staying stuck in your head, if you have worries, fears, irritations, whatever's going on for you. And again, before you go to sleep, if you find that your mind's churning and you're feeling anxious or whatever, write again. You'll write your way back to health. Now, I do have my own morning wisdom journal, which is now being created on Amazon. So Endometriosis Naturally Morning Wisdom Journal. So do go and get that if you feel that you need those extra support and pointers that are in the book as well. But keep up the great work, everyone, and we will speak soon. Bye. I hope you enjoyed that first session of the Q&As, and just to advise that registrations are now open for the next 21-day challenge, which will be starting in the beginning of September. Spaces are limited, but I do hope that you can make that commitment to yourself now, and I look forward to meeting you on the 21-day challenge. Until then, to your health.
Thanks for listening to Heal Endometriosis Naturally with Wendy K. Laidlaw, and I hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and rate us. If you're interested in learning more, you can download your top 5 jumpstart tips at healendometriosisnaturally.com and jump on the VIP email list. Remember to keep you number one. The world needs a healthy you.